All right, so I believe we are now able to see my screen, and I want us to start by installing a code editor. All right, I know we have quite a number of things to do, but I want this day to be a day where we introduce a code editor so that we see how it looks like, how it feels using one, and of course, every other thing we are going now to be doing it on the code editor. Because again, we have been using the Python IDE, whereby if you imagine you are to write a program, say with that has 100 lines of code, it would be a hard task doing it on the Python console. So that's where we need a code editor that will hold our lines so that whenever you press enter, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are executing your code or your program. All right. So we have quite a number of code editors. Let me just do a quick check here so that we can just see them. All right. Here we have quite a number of code editors. We have Visual Studio Code, we have Sublime Text, we have Vim, Notepad++, we have Atom, IntelliJ, we have PyCharm. I've never heard of this, but it's also listed among code editors, and I also don't think I have ever heard of this. All right, so basically a code editor. Remember, we want to write code, right? So we need an interface whereby we can input our code and then have something that will interpret our code. Because whenever you write print hello world, all right, you want a program that will be able to understand what you want to happen, right? So previously, even before we move into the world of coding, at least we can think of editors that will take in your user input and maybe display whatever you write. For instance, I'm sure we have all interacted with MS Word at some level, whereby it gives you an interface whereby you can input some paragraphs, attach some pictures here and there, and all that. All right. So the same way, when you are running a programming language, you need such an interface where you can add paragraphs of code and all that. So that's where a code editor comes into picture. All right. So we have all this, and I think by default, even before you go to downloading any third-party code editor, we have some default code editors. All right, because you may find that you are using an office machine whereby you are not allowed to install any of these. All right, but then you need to write down a few lines of code to see maybe the output and all that. So by default, I'm sure we all have Notepad, right? I'm not sure if I do have one on a Linux machine. So I was just trying to check if I have some Notepad on my machine. I don't have it, but on Linux, I think I'm able to initiate one. All right, so we basically have different types of code editors in Linux, and they are there by default, but in some cases you might need to install them. So in your case, in case you are on Windows, you must just press on the Windows key and search for Notepad. It should be there. All right, but in my case, on Linux, or whoever is using a Linux machine, you can just type in nano, then say give your file a name, because at the end of the day you will be editing a file. All right, so just give your file a name. Let me just call it hello world dot something. All right, for now I can make use of .txt, right? And then I can input all my stuff here. All right, so that's the default code editor. All right, so this is not the best code editor that we can use in writing code, because again, we want something that will at least highlight whenever we create errors, something that will auto format our code, something that will also be able to execute our code, all right, or compile our code. All right, so Notepad or Notepad++ are not the best code editors. All right, they are just used when you have nothing or you have no options. All right, so in case you don't have limited options, that's where we now uh, make a selection out of what we have here. So they are kind of we have popular code editors. One of them we have VS Code. Sublime Text is also another popular one, and we also have PyCharm. All right, we won't forget IntelliJ, but this is preferred especially when you are doing Java. All right, preference for Python, we have PyCharm, and we can also use VS Code and Sublime Text. All right, I haven't interacted with others, but you can also try them out. Actually, Vim should be an inbuilt and mostly on Linux. All right, I just used Nano here. I could as well have used Vim h.txt, and it will give me an interface whereby I can type in some paragraphs. All right. In this case, for the purpose of this course, I would recommend that we use a Visual Studio Code. That is for those who haven't interacted with a code editor in the past. But in case you have any other of your choice, then just use it. The end goal remains the same. We are after the output that we get. As long as it's able to serve that purpose, able to compile our code, able to do the indentation, able to highlight whenever we create errors, then just use it. All right, but in this case I'll go with Visual Studio Code. All right, so in here, just let's search for Visual Studio Code. I'm sure we had already downloaded it in the last session, so in case you haven't yet, this is the website to go to. And in here, this website will try to read through your current operating system, and it will give you options that are related to your operating system. So for those on Windows, it should give you a .exe here for you to download. All right, now that I'm on Linux, I get .db option and . All right, so I believe that most of us are operating on Windows. All right, so for those on Linux, I mean for those who haven't downloaded it yet, just click on whatever you get here, probably a .exe on Windows, and a file should be downloaded. For those on Linux, just click on any of these. All right, so just a quick demo for those who download .db file. I just need to share with you a command. Let me see. So this is how to install a .db program. All right, you just open your terminal, navigate to the location where you have the file downloaded, and execute, or rather run that file. Let me just call it file name.db. All right, then in case you happen to download the .rpm, this is what you should use. All right, so it's basically almost the same. All we need to do is to replace here with rpm. Then in here, just need to have the file name .rpm. So basically, when executing this command, you should be in the location on which that file has been downloaded. So that could be in the downloads folder or whichever other directory. All right. So by doing this, VS Code should be installed. All right. In case you face a challenge installing any of your preferred code editor, just let me know, and we are going to address that. All right. So for those who are probably using a different code editor from VS Code, I'm sure you'll be able to at least join the dots, because I'll be doing the demonstration on how to interact with VS Code. All right. So to launch VS Code, you can just press on the Windows button, then type in Visual Studio Code, all right, and click on the icon for VS Code. All right. All right. So in my case, it pops up with some project. I'll be opening a new window here. So in your case, you should open something like this that doesn't have any project opening it. All right. So this is the look and feel of how the VS Code looks like. All right. And we want to start writing something. So we are concerned where to get that interface, that page that will allow us to write down some code to basically do a thing or two. All right. So in here we have this option of file, whereby you can create a new text file, a new file, a new window, a new window with profile in case you have created profiles and all that. So the very key things that we need to pay attention on. I mean, you have already seen the way I have opened a new window in case you opened VS Code and it already has an open project. All right, you can just open a new window either by clicking on this or a combination of these keys. All right, then another thing, we can also want to create a new file. So we do that by using this option. For instance, I want to create a file, a hello.py file. So what I'll do, I just click on new file. Then in here, I have the option of selecting the type of file that I want to create. So I want to work with Python file. I select that. Then it should open up a file, right? A .py file, all right? So in here, I can be able to type in some stuff, but let's see some other features. Then we also have this option of opening a folder. In case your project is saved in a particular folder, you can just navigate using this option and open that folder. All right. Then you can also open a file. In case your file is in document or whichever location, this is the option to use. All right. Then you may also want to save the changes of whatever you have written down here. This is the option to use. In case you want, for instance, the file in here is a .py file and you want to save it as a .c.csv, then this is the option to use. This option will give you a chance to change the extension of that file. All right. Then of course we have preferences here and all these other options. Maybe you want to exit, you want to close the window, the editor, and all that. All right, so we are going to get into it and see how to do all these practically. All right. So let me just close it and start it up afresh. All right. So we imagine we want to create a directory, and I'll be creating that directory in. Let me just bring this one here. I want to create a directory. I want to do that on desktop. Let's create some folder here. I will name it Python training. All right. I'll do that. Then move in here. All right. So this is the location where I will be creating the different files that we are going to be using for this training. All right. So in case this is the location where we have our Python files, we can open VS Code from this location. All right. So on Linux, I can just right click here and open in terminal. All right. Then I can simply have code space and a dot. All right. So by doing that, press enter, and this directory or this folder will open on VS Code. Then I can just confirm that I trust the others if I do, and confirm that. All right. So for those on Windows, in this directory, there is this bar here. I'm sure you can be able to edit that, and by just pressing on these or rather pressing your cursor on this section, you'll be able to type in something. So just select everything that is there and type in CMD and press enter. All right. So if you do that, it will open your command prompt. Then you can just have this command that is pasted there and press enter. It should be able to open that directory on VS Code. So the other thing is, should you open VS Code and you want to open your working directory, this is how to do it. Just come here in File, open folder, then navigate to the working folder. For now, we talked about Python training. This is where it is in desktop. In case it's in documents, download, music, just navigate to the location of your directory, press on the directory and click open. All right. So here we are, and we want to start by creating our very first program on VS Code. All right. So our very first program, to create a program, you need to create a file first. All right. So our file, we are going to create it under this directory. So we have quite a number of options here. So if I hover on this, that gives me an opportunity to create a new file. If I hover on this, to create a new folder or a new directory. So if I do this, it will create a new directory under Python training. All right. But for now, I want to create a file that I'll name. Let me name it hello.py. All right. So I'll cross these welcome stuff. All right. So another important thing that we need to note is that Python files have a special extension called .py file. All right. So in case we do write some program here, for it to make sense to the Python interpreter, this file must be a .py file, and we are going to demonstrate that. For instance, I want to talk about print, and I'll just talk about printing hello world. All right, I'll talk about that. All right, so before we proceed, at least we need some extension. Not necessary, but it's very crucial. We need an extension so that our interpreter is able to tell that whatever we are typing is Python, and it's able to give us say indentation, auto completion, and it's also able to underline whenever we create typos. All right, so we have this button here. Just click on that. That is on VS Code. I also believe other code editors have some marketplace or some extension area whereby you can be able to search for extensions. So in here, I will search Python. All right. So in here, we have quite a number of extensions that we can install. Many other times I usually go with the popular one, and probably from a known vendor. So in here we can see Microsoft has done one, and for a trusted vendor, it has these kind of mark. All right. So in fact, if you check on what we have here, this publisher has verified ownership of Microsoft.com. Right. So I do check on that, and also the number of downloads. All right. And even before I do that, just click on the extension. Then you are going to read through the information that is given. If you're happy about whatever information is given here, then you can simply install it. All right. So in my case, I've already installed this, and I also think I have installed quite a number here because of maybe the functionality that each one has. All right. So just for those that have the highest number of installations and are already approved, just click on the install button. So for instance, if I was to install this, I would simply click on install here and give it time. All right. So in case I need to restart it, I just need to close VS Code and open it again. And of course, we are sorry for those who may be having other code editors. At least let us ensure that we are at par with those who didn't have an editor of choice. All right. So in here, I have already written down a program. Hello world. I'm sure we are now familiar with what this one should do. All right. So we have an option of trying to execute our program here. Let me just click on this and see the output. Okay, let me just do that. All right, so the terminal opens down here and executes my program. All right, we see hello world here. All right, so another way to do it, let me show you another way to do it. I can simply do, in case you are using Python, I will have Python, then the name of the Python file that I want to execute. For those using Python 3, ensure that you have Python 3 in there. And how do you get this terminal here? Because it wasn't there by default. You do not always need to execute or to click on this button here for you to get the terminal. There is a button here. It should either be here or just click on the three dots. Then we have the terminal option and click on new terminal. All right, so it should open a terminal here. All right, so once we have that, press enter and you have your program being executed. All right, so the other way, you can opt to use the inbuilt terminal for VS Code, or remember we used either the terminal or the command line to open VS Code. All right, so we can go back to the same command line, and when we are in the same location where our file is, we can also execute that program by having the same command here. So we have, in my case, I'm using Python 3, then the name of the file. So in your case, you can either use Python 3 or just Python. Press enter and we get the same output. But for convenience, we can simply use the input terminal here. All right, so let me close that. So I want to do a quick demonstration here, because we have mentioned that for you to create a Python file and for it to qualify to be a Python file, it needs to end with .py. So the first question wanted us to write a Python program to check the data types for the following variables. All right, so in this case, I will just copy everything as it is. All right, and okay, before we proceed, let me just mention something about Python or commenting in Python. All right, we may want to prevent this line from being executed, and we will do that because I wanted to paste in whatever I just copied here, but prevent this line from being executed. So there is usually a shortcut. You can simply type press on Control and /. Right, so it will give a hash in front of that line. All right, so in case we try to execute this, all right, doesn't recognize it. It treats this as a comment. All right, so we use comment especially when you have a program and you have defined a number of functions, you have quite a number of lines, right, to make it easy for you to support that program or any other person. You at least put in some comments. All right, so let me just paste that. So that's basically how to write comments in Python. All right, so the other thing is that we want to act on this question. We want to write a program to check the data types of the following variables. All right, we want to make it simple. I mean, we have defined all these variables, but by the look of things, we expect this to be an integer, this to be a float, a string, a boolean, this is a list, this is a tuple, and this is a dictionary. All right, so our program, I mean, should be a simple one. We just need to have type. All right, and of course I'll copy this, paste it how many times? 7 times. All right, so in here I can have an A, in here I can have a B, C, D, E, F, and G. All right, so let's just break this one down. So we want to check the data type of the variable A, right? So A is equals to 10. So that's where that is coming in. All right. And likewise of B, we have that, C, and all that up to G. All right. So we can have that, and should you want, you can just add some comments. All right. So the question is, will this work? Now that we are working on a code editor, let me try. Let me see if we will get an output. All right. We don't get an output. All right. Let's go back to. Let me just open this. Let me clear that. Have Python, or rather Python 3. Then I have a is equals to 10. Let me show you the difference. If I talk about type A, I get an output. All right. But in here, we don't get an output. Anyone who has an idea why or what we need to do? All right. So in here, if you remember yesterday, I had given an example of, I think I had something like a list, had quite a number of things, and I said, if I type in X, I'll get an output. All right. But the real deal is printing that X, that variable, to get the content. All right. So the same thing applies for type A. This console will understand that we want to print the type A. All right. But in a code editor, if it was supposed to imagine that, and any other time you execute such a file, then you can bet that in a program that has, say, 1,000 lines, you'll get that as the output here. All right. But maybe I don't believe that's what you may be intending to do. You may only want to get the output of those or the data that you want to show on your console. All right. So in that case, you have to print. You have to instruct your interpreter to print something. All right. So we need to print that. All right. So I'll add a print statement before all that we have here. All right. So if you want to place your cursor along this line, just press it in the first entry, then hold your Alt button, then select the next section, the next section, the next section, then the next section, and finally that. Then I can just paste in that. That is the print function. All right. Then I press on the right direction button so that I can add the crossing bracket. All right. So we are able to do that simultaneously on all occurrences. All right. So I come back here to execute that file. I need to run Python 3, in my case, hello world or hello.py. Press that and we get the output. All right. So remember, let me just have this. So we mentioned that A is an integer. We expected to find that. B is a float. We get exactly that. C is a string. That's what we get. Then D is a Boolean. That's what we have. We have a list here. E is a list. That's what we have. This is a tuple. F, and G is a dictionary. All right. So without complicating it, this is what was expected of us in that question. All right. All right. So let's look at the second question. So in here, we're supposed to create a Python program that asks the user for their name, age, and height, then print the data type of each input. All right. Do not do any type of conversion. All right. So I believe we can do a guess on this. I mean, what do we expect on this? All right. So by just a guess, what do we expect? When we have the input of their name, age, height, what do we expect to get as the data type? Let's see how to go about it. So as I mentioned, let's comment out what we have here. Let's comment out what we have here, right? So we want to get the age. We also want to get the height, and we also want to get the name. All right. So I want to do. What do I want to do? All right. So I have age. We want to get an input. All right. Enter age. Let's not complicate the question. Equals input. Enter your height. Enter your height. All right. Input. In here we have enter name. All right. So all right, let me go back to the question here. So we want to create a Python program that asks the user to input their name, age, and height. All right. Then we want to print the data type of each input. So after they input this, we are going to print. Remember, if we talk about type and just say age, let's first of all work on age, maybe, right? If we talk about this, remember, we have said we don't expect anything on the console. So we have to instruct our program to print something on the screen. All right. So the same case with height. If you do that, we have to talk about print, then talk about type, then talk about height. All right. All right. Then in here, let's talk about print. Let's talk about the type. Let's talk about the name. All right. So this is a very simple program, or rather it doesn't do much. You just need to get the name, the height, and or rather the age, height, and name. Further instructions has been given, and we see do not do any type conversions. All right. So we are going to print the data as it is, or rather the type as it is. All right. So in here, let me just do that. All right. Enter the age. I'm 14 years old. Press enter. All right. That comes out as a string. Then the height. I'm 2 meters, or I don't know, 2 centimeters. Press enter, we get it as a string. Then for the name, I am Kim. Press enter, and we get a string as well. All right. So if you remember, there is something we have been working on, and we actually wanted to add two numbers. All right, but we saw it was not easy for us to add the two numbers directly by just getting the input, because we mentioned that whatever input that comes in is, or rather comes in as a string. All right. So in case you have to use this data for something else, maybe to store it in a database or to use it for some arithmetic purposes, you have to convert it to the right data type. All right. Because for instance, if we wanted to see how old I will be in 5 years time, we would have added 5 to my 14 years in here. All right. But you see, you can't just add a string and an integer. All right. So you need to first convert it. So all the outputs, we get all the outputs as strings. All right. Okay, right. Maybe maybe somebody else might approach it in a different way, but as long as you're able to show this, well and good. This not. The program must not always look like what we have here. As long as we get the desired output and we follow the guidelines that have been given. All right. So another task here requires us to write a Python program to create the following variables and print their data types. All right. So this is basically a repetition of what we have here. All right. So if you look at what we have, an integer, we have assigned it to 10. So it must not always be called A. It could be age, length, height, number. As long as you keep in mind the reserved keywords. All right. As long as it's not a reserved keyword, you can just name your variable. You can just give it any name you find fit. All right. So for a float, remember floating numbers. We talked about numbers that or data that has decimal. All right. So even if it's a dot zero, even if it's say 3.0, that becomes a float. All right. Then for a string, could be your name, hello world, or anything as long as it's in quotes. That should be a string. All right. Then for a Boolean, here we have d is equals to true. So just give your variable name, whichever name you feel like, then equate it to either true or false. All right. Then arist, we have arist here. And remember, so something about a list. Yesterday we were being limited. For instance, if yesterday when demonstrating it, maybe in here I would only mention what we have here, right, to be part of a list. But a list can take in integers, it can take in floating numbers, it can take in strings, Boolean, it can also have a list inside it, it can also have a tuple inside it, it can also have a dictionary. All right, so a list can comprise of every other data type that we have here. So it's not only limited to some integers here. You can have every other thing that you have here inside this list. All right, and a tuple, this is what we have here, and also a tuple can also comprise of any other data that we have here. All right, so you can have a tuple inside a tuple. In here you can have a comma, then you have something like that with some other numbers like that. All right, hope you are getting it right. Then for a dictionary, this is the format of a dictionary. All right, it has both keys and values. We are going to at least see how to manipulate data in a dictionary in one of our lessons. So don't worry, we are going to at least interact with this for some time. All right, so that's what these, okay, so we want to write a program to create the following variables and print their data types. So we have already done that, they are created. Then the next thing was just to do exactly what we had done in here. All right, so it's basically a repetition, but it's a good one. It has given us an opportunity maybe to mention something we had not mentioned earlier. All right, and also let me just mention it here. Say a question comes in, and maybe a simple one, and of course whatever questions we are mentioning in this training session might not be the question that life will present to you. Life will give you real life challenges. All right, but whatever we are going through are the building blocks to you being able to solve those challenges. All right, so think of a scenario where you are told to, or you require to fetch input from a user, and you sum the two numbers. All right, let us just do that. It's something that we can mention in this training so that we can also be keen. All right, so let me talk about num1 is equals to input, then enter num1. All right, then we also have num2 input, enter num2. All right, we have these two and we want to get the sum. All right, so remember there is the approach that we were giving yesterday, all right, of trying maybe to, let me just have print, we want to print num1 plus num2. All right, All right. So this is exactly what we were doing. We were converting these numbers to integers. All right. So once we get the input, we directly convert that to an integer so that uh, we are able to do whatever we have here. All right. So let me execute this program. Let's see how it goes. All right. Num1, I want to have the first number is 10.5 or rather 12.5. All right. So look at what we have. All right. So it's not always that you you have to convert your inputs to integers. All right. Reason being, if for instance I wanted to do or to do a manipulation or some arithmetics with integers, it will kind of truncate. It will ignore whatever data that comes after the decimal. All right. Let me use a simple example here. Let me just use a simple example here. Let me use I want to print. For instance, let me show you an example. 2 plus 2. Let me show you 2 plus 2. That should give me 4. Very easy. If I come here, talk about 2.5. 2.5, we expect a 5 there. All right, 5.0 that is. In case I come in here and talk about integer, let's see what happens in here. All right, I need to have that one there. All right, let's do that. All right, so do we see the difference? This is 4, but we expected a 5. So assuming this input was from a user and they did enter a floating number. All right, so it will give a value. It will not give an error, but it will give a value that is not accurate. All right, so as long as you be doing conversions, for you to be able maybe to do some arithmetic and the kind, just be cautious so that you don't lose the value of the data that you have. You don't misrepresent facts. All right, and maybe you never know, this could have been 2.5 million. So if at all the 0.5 million is lost, I mean, that error margin is not acceptable. So we need to be keen. All right. So, okay. So I'll paste these as a challenge. We have gotten some errors. I'm sure we are able to resolve that. All right. Somebody should resolve that. Input must be a float number. Let me just have it like that. All right. So somebody should be able to solve that, so that we can look at that in some other sessions. All right. All right. So I think we have been able to handle this question here. Write a program that converts the following: convert an integer to a float. All right, an integer. Okay, let me come here. So an integer. Let me talk of a is equals to 5. All right. I want to convert that integer to a float. What do? I just talk about, I can just assign it to b is equals to, just talk about float and pass in your integer variable there. If we try to check on type B, or rather let me print type B and type A as well. Print, okay, type A, okay, and also I want to print type B. All right, so this is just for confirmation. All right, so let me clear the screen. then do that. All right, so my A is an integer and my B is a float because it has been converted to a float by just casting it like this. So it's as simple as that. Nothing much was required. So please take note of this question. We might forget about it. You can't just copy it somewhere. All right, then we want to convert a float to an integer. A float to an integer. Back to our editor here. So this should be a float. Let me talk about 5.5. Then we want to convert that to an integer. How do we do it? Just pass an int there. Then let me execute this. So initially we had a float 5.5. Then we converted that to an integer and assigned it to B. So if you see what we have here, we have B as an integer. All right.
I have a question.
Yes, Jonathan.
Kindly repeat the first question.
The very first one
This
here.
for input must be a float number. Is
The
that
one that
something I
I
not
pasted
understand?
here.
Yes.
All right. So, okay. All right. Let me repeat it. Okay. So back here, let me just first of all comment this one out. It's actually what we have here. All right. So, so we basically want to add two numbers. All right. So this is what I have defined. I want to get num1 from the user and num2 from the user. All right. So initially we have an input there, and it's being converted to an integer. But we strictly say that this user should import a floating number. All right. So if I execute that, and we want to import num1, and so we say num1, we can't just put 12. If at all we want to work with 12, we have 12 point something. So if I talk about 12.2, enter, it will throw an error. All right. So the assignment is to try and resolve this error, whereby at least we are able to input a floating number, and do some operations down here. So maybe the challenge will be trying to know if you need the integer here. You need to, I mean, that's the challenge. So just know how to play around with what we have here, so that we are able to get an output of two floating numbers. I'm not sure if that was clear, Jonathan.
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, perfect. So just trying to use the concept that we have already gone through to solve what we have here. At the end of the day, we want to sum to floating numbers. All right. Okay. The next thing that I want us to look at. Okay, we are here. We want to convert a string to an integer. All right. So just to mention, it's not all strings that we can convert to integers. All right. So as long as the fact that the question requires you to convert or to write a program that will convert a string to an integer, the assumption is the string in question is basically an integer that has been converted to a string. All right. So it's just testing maybe a little creativity, and also to appreciate what we have already covered. So for instance, I talk about A being something like 200. For once, let me use a bigger number. All right. So if we try to print the type of A, right? And I don't want to imagine so much. So remember to check for the type of any data type or variable. We use print. All right. So we have print. Then you pass in either the variable or the value of what you want to check. All right. So in this case, I have a variable named A with 200 in quotes. So this can either be single quotes or double quotes. All right, and we said in code editor, if you just talk about print A, it will not print anything on the console. So we have to print. So we want to print the type of A. If I run my program here, right, we get that it's a string. So this string, we want to convert it to an integer. How do we do that? We just pass it in. We just pass it into an integer. Let me name it B, not A, right? And then in here, we'll be printing. Okay, we'll be printing that. We'll be printing B, and I can also print. B. All right. Maybe let me just also print A, and we are going to see that they may not have a difference. I mean, when you print, all right. So in here, the first print is printing the type of A. It's a string because it has the quotes. Then we convert our string to an integer in here and assign it to B. Then we print again. We print A. So A is 200. So as you can see, when you print it, you can't just tell if it's a string or otherwise by just looking at it. All right. Then should we print B? We also get 200, and we are not able to tell the data type by just looking at it. Then if we try to print type of B, then we get it as an integer because we have actually converted that to an integer. All right. So the reason why I said that it's not all strings that you can convert to an integer. If I talk about my name here, try to convert it to an integer, you see it's not really possible to do that. All right, maybe let me try something. Let's see if this will work. If I have maybe 200, then I have done. All right, so we see again it's not able to do that. All right, but as you continue going through Python, there is somebody who would also go into shell scripting. I believe there could be something you can do to this string to extract the integer part. All right, so as part of your mini project to enhance your running, just find out how you can extract 200 from what we have here. All right. All right. So that is that. I mean, we wanted to see how to convert a string to an integer. And we mentioned that the string that you can be able to convert is a string that is basically a number, but is in quotes. All right. So the same way, we want to convert a string to a float. It's not all strings. These are basically numbers that are in quotes. All right, so in here, let me just manipulate this. I just need to convert it to a floating number here, a float like that, and everything else should remain. Clear the screen, execute that. All right, so if you convert, say, I mean, there is a number that once you just look at it, you know that this is not a decimal number. All right, but should you convert it to a decimal number, it will add a dot zero. That's why we have what we have here. All right, that is it. All right, then integer to string. All right, this is another open question because any integer, you can just convert any integer to a string. Let me just write a big number there. We want to convert it to a string, so we just need to change this. All right, so actually we don't talk about string, we talk about str. So to convert something to a string is str. All right, so we pass it in through str. And remember something we mentioned about our program being able to highlight wherever we have errors. I hope you can see some line here. All right, so if you hover on that, you at least get something that string is not a defined or that. All right, so you are able to at least identify where you have created an error or a typo. All right, so if we do that, we see our number has been converted to a string. But should you print them, you are not able to tell whether it has been printed as a string or an integer. All right. All right. That is that for question number 3. Let us do number 4 and call it a day. All right. So in here, we are supposed to write a Python program that takes a user's age as an input. So it will take it in as a string. Remember what we have encountered in the past, and converts it to an integer. Then calculates how many years are left until they turn 100 years and print the result. All right. So we want to write a Python program that will take a user's age as an input. Let's start with that. So our variable here, let me just call it my age. I'll have an input here. Enter your age. Maybe you can give more instruction in years. All right. Then this will come in as a string. All right. So input as a string, then convert it to an integer. So remember, you can convert it at this stage. Alternatively, let's do this. Maybe this is not the best name. My integer age is equals to integer. Then let's have not input. Let's have my age here. All right. So we are now sure that my age is not a string. It has been converted to an integer. All right. So we want to know, like, for instance, if I'm say 10 years old, and for me to get to 100, let's do a demonstration here. I'm currently 10 years old and the target is 100. So how many years remains? So we are basically talking about 100 minus my current age. So it remains something like 90 years, right? So once we know that, so we are basically working with 100 minus my current age. That should give me the number of years remaining for me to hit 100. All right. So this is what we have. Let me talk about remains, or let me talk about years remaining to hit 100, or years 100. All right. So I can just have 100 in here and now subtract my integer age. All right. Then I'll print years 100. All right. Maybe I can add some, I can make it a little more fun and talk about, let me format that. Okay, let me do that. There are those number of years. There are 50, 90 years to go before I hit 100. All right. Then I can add dot format here and then pass in years 100. All right. You're just trying to make it a little bit fun and also explore something else that we mentioned here. All right. So let me run my program here. Right. How old am I? I'm 20 years old. So I expect that I need 80 more years to get to 100. All right. So there are 80 years to go before I hit 100. All right. So I already done that. I'm 10 years old. I have 90 more years. All right. I am 80 years. Sorry. I am 90 years. How many years to go? 10 years old. All right. How about if I am, say, I am 120? All right. Do I require minus 20 years old? All right. So let me do something else. I am minus 10 years old. You see? All right. So for now, this is how to do it. All right. But as we go by, most of what we are doing, we should be able to advance them as time goes by, because we should be able to handle, for instance, if I say I am 120 years, where was that? I'm 120 years. Then I shouldn't get something like this, that I need to subtract 20 years from my age so that I hit 100. I mean, so you should be able to at least let your program know that the user can input anything, even their email, when they are asked to input their age. So if you input your email here, it's not possible to take it through converting it to an integer and doing all these arithmetics. So you should be able to handle that data as it comes, all right, and preventing your program from crashing. So it should be kind enough to tell me, hey, we need a number. All right, we need a number from you. In case you import something that is over 100, it should handle that and tell you, hey, or rather, you are already 100 years old or 100 plus years old. All right, and we shouldn't have instances of where it's telling you that you need to subtract your age and all that, and should also handle this accordingly. All right, so there's too much to learn. We have done quite a number of assignments here, and we will still do more. All right, so we'll end it there. Tomorrow we are going to finish with what we have here and any other question that you may have. All right, then we are going to proceed with the next sections that we have ahead of us. All right, so I beg to stop it at that point unless anyone has a question.